This unit is going to talk about profit and how monopolists calculate their profit maximizing quantity. By the end of the unit, you'll understand how to mathematically find the optimal quantity for a monopoly to produce. As a reminder, perfectly competitive firms produce where price is equal to marginal cost. That's the quantity that generates them the highest possible profit. That's because profit is equal to, yeah, we already derived this. Profit's equal to quantity times the difference between price and average total cost. So you take your profit margin, scale it up by the quantity that you produce, you got your profit. A perfectly competitive firm is going to produce where price equals marginal cost because they have an additional constraint, price equals marginal revenue. And they're applying this condition that marginal revenue equals marginal cost. I say again, marginal revenue equals marginal cost at maximal profit. Where were we? Oh, right, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So a perfectly competitive firm, for them, price equals marginal revenue, so price equals marginal cost at their optimal level. All firms are going to achieve maximal profit where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. If this isn't in your notes by this point, it's like the third time it's shown up in bold. Please write this down. It's just that for perfectly competitive firms, price is equal to marginal revenue, so it might be easier to remember price equals marginal cost. This is just the rule of rational choice. An action is rational as long as its expected marginal benefit is at least as much as its expected marginal cost. Take a drink. So for a firm, benefit is revenue. They're costs. We still call them costs. So for a firm at optimal profit, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Remember that perfectly competitive firms face these downward sloping demand curves. Strike that. They face horizontal demand curves because they can produce as much as they want without changing the price. Monopolists, they face downward sloping demand curves. So the decisions are going to follow some of the same principles, but they're going to be made differently. For a monopolist and a perfectly competitive firm, total costs are going to increase, usually at an increasing rate. But monopolists facing a downward sloping demand curve face a trade-off. As they sell more units, they have to give discounts by lowering the price. Keep in mind, we don't have the ability to look at different people and tell what their willingnesses to pay are. We can't price discriminate yet. We'll find the tools to do that later on. But selling more quantity means we're going to have to lower the price. So we make more money by selling more units, but we make less money by having to lower the price. Let's figure out what the best quantity for this producer will be. Take note, I've got formulas up in the top here. Marginal revenue is change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. Marginal cost is change in total cost divided by change in quantity. But these are the same quantities that we saw in the previous slide. So we have our total revenue, we have our total cost. For this, we can start off by calculating our marginal revenue. We'll never be able to calculate marginals for our first unit. We will be able to calculate averages, but we don't have to do that right now. For our second unit, we take our change in total revenue, that's highlighted in yellow, 2,200 minus 1,200, and we divide by our change in quantity, that's 2 minus 1. What's 2 minus 1? Right, it's 1. So 2,200 minus 1,200 gives us 1,000. Let's do this again. For our third unit, we take 3,000, we don't subtract the 1,200, we subtract the 2,200, the one right above it. And then we take the change in quantity, 3 minus, what was the quantity right before we made our third unit? Right, 2, that's right. So 3,000 minus 2,200 is 800. 3 minus 2 is 1. Our marginal revenue is 800. We can work through the same calculations and find that our marginal revenue seems to be decreasing by 200 every time we produce a unit. We also want to calculate our marginal costs because, remember, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So, take our 750 minus our 500, take our 2 minus 1, and our marginal cost for our second unit is 250. Do the same calculations all the way down. We see 250, 250, 250, but then for our fifth unit, we go straight from 1250 to 1650. So our marginal cost increases to 400. Then we go to 850, then to 1500, then to 2400. These goods are getting so expensive as we produce them. Now let's go ahead and find our optimal profit level. In order to do that, we're going to have to figure out our profit. Our profit is going to be total revenue minus total cost. Remember, that's a Greek letter pi. Pi stands for profit. Don't ask me, I'm just an economist. 1,200 minus 500 is 700. We can go through, we can subtract on every line total revenue minus total cost. We end up with 700, 1450, 2,000, 2350, 2350 again. 1,700. Oh, that's not good. 200. Oof. By the time we get to our eighth unit, we're losing money. Not just we're making less, we're actively losing money. Well, let's see. Let's find the highest quantity we can in the profit unit. Okay, so we have 2350 when we produce 5 units. We also had 2350 when we produced 4 units, so we're not making any more economic profit. But keep in mind, an economic profit subtracts our opportunity costs. The same economic profit usually corresponds to a higher accounting profit. So even though we've got higher opportunity costs, we're taking in more money. By the way, let's point out, take a look at marginal revenue. Take a look at marginal cost. This is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And just as a side note, if we have a tie in the amount of profit we can produce, always look for the highest quantity. Again, it's usually going to be a higher accounting profit, even though it's the same economic profit. And think about it this way. Would you rather have 4 satisfied customers or 5? Yeah, me too. I'd rather have 5. All right. So, quick review. How does demand differ from demand for a perfectly competitive firm? Monopolists have downward sloping demand curves. Perfectly competitive firms perceive a horizontal demand curve. What's the marginal revenue and marginal cost in a monopoly, and how do you calculate it? You can review the previous slides. Marginal anything is change in that anything over change in quantity. And what level of output should the monopolist supply? And what price should it charge in order to maximize profit? Look for the price and quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Thanks, folks.